what it will rent for. All of these things are just guesses. Now, you could look backwards, which I highly, highly, highly suggest people do. Look back to calculate your ROIs to determine whether or not you want to continue with this investment versus using ROI to analyze a deal on the front end. Why? That deal on the front end, analyzing that ROI, there are so many inflated numbers. There's so many guesses to those numbers that, frankly, it makes it really difficult to do a real good job analyzing it. I have had investors who, when we were talking about ROI, say, oh, this is a 7.6% ROI. I only do 8% or higher. 0.4% get you out of a deal? That's ludicrous. That's nonsensical. That makes no sense. Mainly because that 7.6 or that 8.2, those are both guesses. We don't know what the house will actually rent for. We don't know what the maintenance will be. Even if you're acquiring a turnkey house that has been occupied by a tenant, the same tenant for the past 10 years, you have no idea what the next year worth of ROI is going to be. You just don't know. And so instead of dying on that hill, what I suggest is, how much capital do you have and how much capital do you anticipate it producing? And saying, do I want to live with this return? Do I want to, does that make me enough money? In fact, right before I started recording this, somebody sent me a 3-pack of notes. The notes are not real estate. They're loans against real estate. And that those loans against real estate are, cash flow producing. They have been lent against these. Now, in this particular pack, I decided to pass because 2 of the 3 were 2-bedroom, 1-bath with 800 square feet. And so you got to look at the underlying asset behind this note. A note is just a loan that's been made. And like real estate, you can sell notes. So someone was trying to sell me these 3 notes. They were wanting $450,000 and they were going to be producing about $5,000 a month. So I looked at that and I said, well, that's great. I can go buy this house, or I can go buy these notes. I can go get a return. And what I cared about was, that $500,000, and then, that $5,000 per month. And then I concern myself, do I want to place $450,000 into that? Instead of saying, oh, well, I think that's a 13, 12, 14%. I'll do the math real quick. What is the ROI on that? How you would do this is the purpose of the episode, is how to calculate ROI. You take $5,000 times 12, because that's the annual, so 60,000, and you would divide by 450,000. That comes to a 13.3% ROI. Not bad. My problem with the deal was not the return. My problem with the deal was that 2 of the 3 houses had only 2 bedrooms and 1 bath and were 800 square feet. I got to underwrite and look at the underlying loans, because what happens if that note goes bad, that borrower stops paying, and I get this property back, right? Now what happens? Now I sit there and wonder, can I sell this? Can I get my money back? Is it worth the, $150,000 effectively that I paid for this thing? And the answer in that market is no. So I passed on that deal. Would I pay a different price? Maybe, but I always concern myself with getting the property back. And what do I do with a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 800 square foot house in South Memphis, Tennessee? Like, that's a pretty rough deal. So like I said, no, I'm not interested in that. But going back to that whole point, when we're talking about notes, a lot of the deals that I do some of the deals that I do, not all of them, are hard money loans where I lend money and people then, usually it's on fix and flips, fix up the house and then pay me back. And here's the funny part that I think investors have a hard time with. When I lend that money, I lend at 2 points and 12%. That's typically what I'm lending at. So 2 points, a point is 1% of the loan. So if I made a $100,000 loan, 1 point would be $1,000. Therefore, if I charge 2 points, I would get $2,000 just to send the money to the title company. Then every month, because I'm doing 12%, $100,000 at 12% means a $1,000 monthly payment. Hey, thanks for watching. I've got a free video on a business you can do on nights, weekends, and margins of your workday. So follow this QR code, click the link, and watch that video now.